This week in Hey the Parents, we are talking all about the hot mess express in your life. We talk about how to navigate the obstacles with the kiddos who may have some trouble with focusing, organizing, and daily routines. So buckle in, because on this episode of Hey the Parents, we're discussing executive functioning skills, keeping it together, and some of the experiences we've had that might help you with yours. Now, where are your shoes? And of course, we talk about when we were younger, mishaps with our own kids, because on Hey the Parents, it is an honest discussion about raising kids. I'm Michael Height.
I'm Sara D.
And I'm Mike Levine.
Kids don't come with a handbook, so we need your help.
Where do babies come from?
Where do you think they come from?
Is this a kissing book?
Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
I learned it by watching you.
There are no rules in this house. Not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
We sent them to the best boarding schools. We hired the best nannies. We did everything right.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
No drinking, no drugs, no kissing, no tattoos, no piercings, no ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
This is Hey Other Parents, an honest, messy, imperfect show for raising kids.
Hey, welcome back. It's us again.
Good morning. How's it going?
Hey, Sara D.
Howdy ho.
Hey, we're so glad you came back to hang out with us. We discussed this parenting thing. So whether you are in the car, folding laundry, cooking dinner, getting organized, or on the go, we know that you have a lot of choices for podcasts out there. So thank you for listening to ours. And welcome back to our returning listeners, and a big welcome to our new moms and dads listening. And if this is your first time joining us on this podcast, Hey the Parents, it is a chance for a few of us parents who decided that we needed to join our efforts together to try to get through this, as we call it, a survival course. We pick a different theme, a different topic each week, and then we discuss it from the standpoint of when we were younger, what we grew up with our own parents, and then we shift on over to now as adults, where we certainly did not get a handbook for our own kids. We talk about what we go through, we share some of our experiences, and then we learn from each other, and each week we feel a little bit better because we have each other and we have all of you. So if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, we'll tell you a little later in the show on how you can get in touch with us here. So today, Sara and I are going to do this duo thing. Mike Levine has a bit of a wacky schedule, and he will be on as often as he can. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into the main part of the podcast, and that entails a topic of the week. What is the topic for today?
Okay, so right now we're going to talk about our lovely children that, may have some disorganizational challenges. Both of our children have been in OT and PT for various reasons. And for those parents who currently have their children in those therapies, they know that all that is kind of closely related to your organizational skills. So we just want to let you guys know that we see you, and we know that they may not be the most organized children in the world. However, we are doing the best that we can, and they're amazing kids. They may not be able to put things back into a box, but they are out of the box thinkers, and that's what makes them so amazing.
So we're going to try to be as honest as we can with our own experiences. Those experiences may not match yours. They may match yours, or you might be going through something where your kids are a little bit younger, or maybe you're just like have that feeling where you're like, my kid might be a mess after all. And that's okay, because you know what? You're not giving them back. You're keeping them. And we are here to discuss what it's like. Because just remember, when you go on Facebook and you see those pictures of the perfect family, there were probably 499 other pictures of the kids crying and whining before they got the going. So we're gonna discuss the ones that happened with the 499. So here we are. This is a bit of a broad topic. We have a lot of thoughts about it. But if you're going to be honest, you kind of go back a little bit when you're younger and talk about some of the things that occurred where you may have given some of your genes and some of your own things that you had when you were younger onto your own kids, because sometimes the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So speaking of my apples and trees, I will tell you that I was the kind of kid that I needed a lot of help from my mom and dad growing up with getting organized and things like that. But when it was homework time, I've definitely talked about this last season about sitting at the kitchen table watching my mom cook and just being there for someone to be like popping in and be like, you focusing, you're listening, you're doing the thing, what are you up to, what problem are you on? So that was like a thing that obviously thank God for my mom, because I probably would still be sitting there trying to work on my math homework from third grade. But I was definitely the kind of kid who came home, had papers at the bottom of my backpack, needed to sort that thing out. Maybe there was a birthday invitation from a week before. I definitely was that kid. When you start to transition from when you start to transition from when you're younger and you're in the elementary school, your parents sort of try to like give you some responsibility to kind of like be a little bit more independent. And with that independence comes my mom driving me back to school 1,000 times to knock on the door for the custodian to come down to go to my locker and get the things that I forgot. So does this sound anything like you? Because I'm starting to wonder if this is just me and my own little island of ridiculousness, or if other people share these things as well.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I actually feel like as a parent, I am doing what your mom does. But when I was younger, I liked to make sure I had all my homework done, and like I was like very organized in that sense. But once the unit was done or whatever topic it was, that paper was gone. It went to like the abyss. I never saw it again. Maybe in June when I dug it out from the bottom of my backpack. My mom just had a routine for me, like come home, take off your uniform, have a snack, do your homework, play, eat. And she didn't really like sit there and say like, hey, why are your papers all like scruffy looking? And, did you have a long-term assignment? And I was notorious for forgetting about long-term assignments, like a poster or something like that. And I remember one time I went to my dad on a Sunday, because remember back in the day, none of those convenience stores, CVS, nothing was open 24 hours or really late. And on a Sunday, everything closed by 6, or at least that's what my parents told me. And
I believed it.
And I believed it. So, and my mom did that drive. So I went to my dad and I was like, Daddy, I need a poster. And he's like, oh, okay, when do you need it for? And I'm like, tomorrow for the project that's due that I've had for over a week now. And he's like, oh my God. And it was like, beep, 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 beep. And I was like, oh no. I was like, he's bad. So he got up, he left, and he didn't come back for a bit. He was out there. He was out there in the wilderness, and he came back on a Sunday, probably by like 8 o'clock, 8:15. And he's like, you are lucky. I went to Stewart's on Broadway, and they were just about to close. And I begged him. I said, please, my daughter needs this poster paper. And, they laughed and they talked about me apparently. And thank God my dad had like a nice relationship with that man, because it was like a smaller convenience store before like CVS. So I had my poster paper, and then I remember proceeding to draw. It was like a Say No to Drugs ad. And I remember having this big piece of poster paper and drawing probably like a 2-inch little cigarette on it saying, don't be a butthead.
Oh no. That's amazing. Like, what do I do with all this land to draw on? What am I going to do?
I'm going to draw the smallest thing possible. And I remember just being happy that I was able to turn it in. And I probably could have had my parents look it over and be like, hey, you have all this white space to color in. And I was just happy I had the paper, which maybe, I'm sure my dad probably looked at that poster and was like, yep, that's great. That's an A+ right there.
I feel like now it's hard to like be in the shoes of like thinking back now and not be on the parent side right now. There were so many times where like we would go, and I'm sure like people our age are kind of thinking of something similar, like when you would do like a research assignment or whatever you had, like write a paper. I remember like go with my mom, go to the library, and then you'd grab as much change as you had, and like you would start photocopying pages from different books.
Oh God.
And then like take it, cut it out, lay it down on the floor, put things in order, and then start writing. And it was such a feeling of like, I just remember that feeling in my gut of just feeling overwhelmed and just like not knowing where to start and just wanting to shut down and not do it. And it was just like the torturous process of like, how much more is this going to be? How much longer is it going to be? What do we have to do? And I feel like my mom must have been like, I can't deal with this child. But that is, those kind of things just like take like, it's as a kid, you don't have that mentality. Like all you're thinking is like, how do I make this yucky feeling go away of this homework or work? And I just wanted to stop so I could go and like have fun again. And like as a kid, like obviously you do not have the same perspective. And even in high school, I remember when my parents were, my mom loves to tell me this story, and I've also in mixed company, and it's fine now. They love to tell me the story where they came to the room, to my room in the middle of the night. So my mom must have heard this like tick, 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 and she's probably like, what is that? Open the door, and I am asleep on the bed wearing sunglasses with the light in my room bright as can be, and I'm holding like flashcards, which I probably didn't finish making. I probably did the night before, and they're like dropping one by one onto the floor, and what she's hearing is this pile of cards falling out of my hand, still gripping onto the cards as I'm sleeping on the bed. And I think like I know that like as a parent and as an adult now, looking back on like this cramming to the last minute, I'm like, I do not need that feeling in my life. Like that gives me stress now thinking about it. Like there's got to be a better way, And I think like some of this reminds us to how we were then.
Oh yeah, I definitely was notorious for cramming and or just plain old forgetting. Like there are so many times I walked into a class and I'm like, even in college, I hate to admit it, I would look around and be like, what? I was like, is there a test or a quiz today? Because everyone's like studying and they're like, yeah, it's like a big test, a unit test or whatever. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, cool. And I kind of formed in high school a method in my brain because I started being responsible and not losing all the cool color pens my mom used to get me. And
they all came together that moment.
It all came together. I actually kept all the pens. So that step one, keep pens that you get to keep you organized. And so I would start writing notes and like color coding like things like, oh, blue meant like a vocab word. This meant that. So when I didn't study, I would like in my mind mentally be like, oh, that was a blue word. Yeah, that's right. Or, ooh, I drew a little bat for that because it was kind of funny in my brain. Like, so I started doing that and that kind of worked in my crazy little brain for whatever reason. Because my grades were never bad, but I just never studied. Like I just totally forgot about stuff. And it wasn't like I was doing anything at home either. I was just hanging out.
Right. I love that because it's like just screams to like this idea of like having like all the time in the world. And like it didn't matter because like it did like you wouldn't probably get started until like the last minute or whatever else, and then all of a sudden it starts to come together. But that's funny
when
because
it was
like
real.
yeah, because all of a sudden but because like from a creative standpoint, like sometimes you just don't like have the juice going until you like start sitting down to do it and it feels like the right time. But like other things in life don't work that way, and that's something that I think as a kid like you have a hard time sort of kind of like working that out. But there's like without a doubt like some things that we're going to talk about today that I think that Sara and I have tried to maybe implement from a place of finding like random things in the bottom of our backpacks to try to figuring out how can we do better? How can we have a better experience now with our own kids? Because this stuff is like it's like it feels like once the problem starts, you don't even know where the source is anymore. You're just trying to like put band-aids on a problem. So today we're going to try to talk about some of the things that maybe work, maybe don't work. And I really seriously cannot wait for Sara to tell me some stuff because she's so good at this stuff. So we're definitely gonna talk about it, and she's gonna be like, "All right, I tried this, it doesn't work." But we have some routines, and I'm definitely not gonna take credit for some of this stuff because my wife has been a huge impact on our kids and getting these routines down. But I think that maybe routines is a good place for us to start because I feel like we were watching Abbott Elementary School together as a family. And there's this one episode. This isn't really much of a spoiler, but whatever. The principal, Ava, right? Ava,
yes.
She has to substitute for a class one day. And like, there's this whole conversation where like, the kids are just like doing nothing. She's like, you're going to have free time, whatever it is. And everything starts to fall apart. And one of the things that they had this conversation that really stuck with me is that the routines all matter. And like she was making fun of like one of the teachers and she was like, why do you do this? Whatever else, this is silly. And he's like, why do you think we do this? Because every routine connects to the next thing and it all fits together and you have to do this. You got to put the date in the board. You got to do all these things. So in that episode, I was like, oh man, you know what? Like these routines really do matter. So like I was thinking about it from the time the kids get home from school, like we have like, there's like a this is like not a conversation about negotiating. This is non-negotiable. You get inside, you put your lunch away, you go wash your hands, shoes come off, they go in a spot, you get your homework out and you start. And I think that for us, like I remember back as a kid, like I would like oftentimes I get home before everybody else and I would start grabbing a snack and sitting down for TV, and then getting work done was a disaster. If I only would have just started my homework when I got home from school when I was younger, I probably would be in a different boat. But for our kids, I feel like this is something that would like just you get home, you get your homework started, and that is like an important thing. Do you kind of have a similar setup for you guys?
Yes, so I do the Carmen tried and true method of you come inside, get outside your outside clothes, get a snack, get some homework done. But things can get a little crazy now because there are times where Julian's coming home later or earlier than Sophia and someone else had an activity. So he might be by himself for like a little bit of time. And when I come home, I'm like, dude, snack was like supposed to be 15 minutes. Why are we still snacking upside down on the couch, doing something? So those routines, man, they really do mean something because when left to their own devices, I know my children will not follow it. But putting away your lunch, that's a good idea because I definitely have found some moldy lunches in Julian's backpack.
Right, the next day because we don't have 1,000 ice packs, so the next day comes around and like if we don't put away their if they don't put their lunch away and you open their backpack and you see like the lunch from yesterday, and then now the ice pack is warm. We have like a few extra ones, but they're like those like camping cooler ones. So like you have, I mean, camping. Do I ever camp? They're like the cooler ones. So like they're thicker and bigger. I'm like, this is gonna make it very tight for their lunch to fit. But I feel like it's just one of those things,
Yeah, no, Julian, man, he had a new lunchbox at the beginning of the school year, all excited, just a plain something simple. And I think last time I saw it was like September 11th or 12th. And then it magically appeared October like 5th. And I was like,
God
hey,
only knows
your
what was inside
lunchbox.
that thing.
Me and his old sandwich had a whole conversation. Okay, at that point, let's put it that way.
Burn before eating, because that was like no bueno. So like for us, like one of the things that helps as well is that I think that my wife found out is like, look, I'm the kind of person that I think this is definitely speaks to me. Like you can't have it both ways. Like you can't have like no list and then not want to hear about the things you're not doing. Like it's right. Not both. You have to like have something. So like in our house, like I know thyself. I know how I am. So like having like a list of things that I have to get done. Especially like on the weekends of like, for the kiddos, you got to pack your snacks, you got to get your lunch done, you got to do these things. We do that stuff on a Sunday because it kind of makes the week a little bit easier. But like we realized that we were getting to these arguments with like some of our kids because I won't name names, but because when we would tell them about like a chore or responsibility, it became like, oh, seriously? Not now. I want to play my game first or this, that, and the other. Or like, what do you mean I got to do this? Like, it was just kind of like a reaction to it. So we're like, look, here's the deal. Here's your list. You can get it done Saturday. You can get it done Sunday. But before we start the week, this has to all get done, and you could choose. And for Ethan sees that list on Saturday. He's like, I'm gonna knock this all out. And then he's so proud of himself. He gets it all done, and then he kind of sort of maybe rubs in everyone's face a little bit. He's like, oh, did you pack your lunch yet? Can't do this until you pack your lunch. So that he has it all done. He's kind of happy about it, but he feels better because then he's just done. I think we also mentioned that there's these like, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a little plastic slider thing where like it's a list basically, and you could write like the chore or the thing that has to get done, and then you flip these little things to the left, and then it's like red or no color, and then when you push them from left to right, then they turn green or something like that. So like it's a way for like a little bit of a checklist of things that you have to do every time, where like instead of writing it out every single time, you have your little routine thing, and it helps the kids kind of get ready in the morning. And did you brush your teeth? That's important. Did you do this? And so it takes some of the stress off of off my wife in the morning because she's here with the kids. You need something, right?
I think I might steal that from that idea because Julian needs the help. I mean, every night, because now he's going to a private school, so he has to wear a uniform, which has alleviated the like random outfits that match or don't match. But it's the shoes. Oh my God, the shoes. Okay, well, let me get to the shoes thing. So the other day we're like, oh, we're gonna do an episode called Hot Mess Express. And we're like, yeah, ha ha ha. And then Julian and Mike had written the notes already, and in the opening he has, "Where's your shoes?" And I was like, haha, so typical of, all these families. Literally the next day, Julian and I shared a screenshot to Mike Levine and to Mike Height. And it's Julian saying, Mom, I went to school. One is Sophia's shoe and one is my shoe, because they both wear penny loafers to school. And I was like,
Child.
But why? How? How do you not feel the difference? I was like, oh my God. And then luckily he went home early because bad for him because he went home early feeling sick, but good for him in the sense that he's not walking around with two mismatched shoes. One a feminine, penny loafer, and one a male penny loafer. So
it's all about the priorities, I guess, right?
But the night before, and I guess he's at that age now, he used to be so better at listening, but now he's getting older, so he's getting that preteen brain. Every night I say, Julian, do you have a clean pair of pants, shirt, tie, blazer, shoes. Yep. So now I'm like, I guess I have to go back to, because, as a parent, you want to give them that independence, and not like hover and baby. But then at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I physically go upstairs to your room, I'm going to see everything hanging and ready for you. Right. And he's like, let me just do that real quick. And I'm like, And then it turns out, my pants weren't clean. The shirt, I don't know where it is or needs to be ironed. So, I'm trying to get him into that routine on a Sunday night or even every night, just to make sure he knows where everything is, because Gene is the morning parent and, he's in a rush. Sometimes he's got a meeting, he's got to leave early. So Julian's got to get himself to the bus stop, which is right across the street, on his own. But if Gene's trying to leave and Julian can't find something that he should have had ready, it's a pain. So, and then you get the texts of like, these kids are messes. But
you're like, I'm already at work.
I know. I'm like, and I'm sorry, they're messes, but oh well.
They're half yours.
Good luck with that. Oh no, sympathize. But for us, what we started doing is going over like a family calendar. So Gene and I will like coordinate, okay, what do we have coming up this week? Any like school events? And of course, something still falls through the cracks, but we try for the most part, try to plan ahead. Who's taking a late bus? Who's taking the early bus? Because, but their practices are the same day and at the same time and in two different parts of Long Island. So, so we have to alternate to make everything even Stevens. And, even with Sophia, I say to her, I'm like, okay, what activities do we have this week for cheer? What other obligations do they have? Because trying to plan it all and trying to get play dates in there or hangout sessions or even time for you and your spouse, trying to get those kids organized in their schedules first, especially if they're like you, who like me. And I mean, you meaning me, because I'm the tree, who, wait till Sunday night for the poster paper. That's something we always kind of like, I'm trying to get them organized and better at,
Because it definitely like adds some stress to your house. Like when all you're doing is trying to figure out like, instead of like, what's that called? Like it's like chasing the side part of it instead of actually trying to like hit the solution, and you're hitting all the symptoms instead of the cause. I'm trying to say a saying. I don't know what it is. This cliche is just going down the drain. But the idea of like going for the symptoms instead of like the main problem, I think like that doesn't ever really resolve itself, because you're always like running behind, putting band-aids on it. And if I could squeeze more cliches in this, but I think like that's definitely true, because the thing about like the kids is like this. I love that you do that with the kids with the calendar and talk about it. I feel like we started just like the things that you do versus the things you actually like bring a spotlight to is such a big difference in my house. I've noticed like we have the family calendar, which is great, but it's more of a reactive thing sometimes. So we started doing this thing on Sunday nights where like, as we're having dinner, we're like, all right, cool. We're going to go through the whole week right now. So we're like, all right, let's just look at the calendar. Let's just talk about what we have going on. Like we have, Taekwondo on Monday and Tuesday. You got speech on Wednesday. We got religion, whatever. We've got, who has a test this week? Does anything happening crazy after school at night? Do we have to like do whatever? Do you need to prepare for a test? Do you have to like, know that Tuesday is going to be a wash and you're not going to be able to do stuff, so you need to get things done early on a Monday, whatever it's going to be. But like actually taking the time to go through everyone's schedule for like what takes all of less than 5 minutes seems to be, at least it takes away some of the like knee-jerk reactions of like, I didn't know I had that tonight, which is just ridiculous. But I think, when it comes down to it, ultimately just having that short conversation of like a planning meeting for the family of what's going on, it seems like it helps.
It definitely helps, because I also like, I tell the kids, like, by us looking at the schedule and saying like, oh man, Julian has a game and you have this, like if you have a test on Thursday, but you want me to study, we need to plan the time when we're going to study together, when you're going to study on your own. So I try to teach the kids to do that, and if they have any like major long-term assignments and things like that, I'm like, okay, you know what? You're really busy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You don't even realize it. Maybe start working on that project now. And another thing I like to do, because I always think of my poor dad, and that's probably where I started from with the oak tag. I try to keep the house, and now of course the kids use it for other things, and that always goes, not as planned, but I try to keep extra supplies, like the staplers, the tape, the color pencils, the oak tag, smart. Like things like laying around and stuff like that. That way we just have it, so that if it is a Sunday night at 8 p.m. and I don't feel like getting up to go searching for oak tag, we have some. And so far, things, I think we moved away from oak tag, but, for the most part, like I try to keep those supplies there or pick up because crayons never last, like they always kind of disappear. My
Yes.
dog has likes to eat crayons every once in a while. So,
It's like a color trail.
yes. So, so as you know, some colors are more in favor than others in terms of being used. So I try to buy like a new little pack of crayons every once in a while when I remember to, just to have it because, when you need that black crayon, which is so important for everything, it's missing or the dog ate it or God knows what.
I think that's really smart because like the thing that my wife kind of started doing was making like an area in our pantry where there's just like stuff that like basically where things need to go. Everything's got a home, but like everything could be seen. So like putting things where they could be seen seems to be like a really helpful thing in our house because like instead of like, I'm the kind of person where she'll laugh at me. Maybe not laugh is a word, but where I'm like, I don't see the ketchup. And she's like, have you tried moving something in a refrigerator? And then miraculously, if you move one small thing out of the way, there's the ketchup. But like the thing is having these places where like, all the snacks are, where the kids can grab them, where the brown bags are, that's been like a helpful thing for them. And then like we were like, you know what? She came up with this. There's got to be a better way to do this. Like, especially with like the kids that have these wacky routines where now like maybe orchestra, chorus, whatever it is, music is before school, or like they have to remember for sectionals, and like they have to remember to bring an instrument. So how do they remember to bring an instrument? Put it by the front door so that they can't possibly leave without seeing it. So like little things like that is like visual cues of like, maybe I do this today. These things seem to make like a possible difference in ways where like they're keeping track of like 85% of it, but sometimes you got to give them like sort of like Dora the Explorer clues so that like where's the viola, and then she stares blatantly at you as something sparkles in the room.
Yes, or you just ignore the sparkling and just walk out the door because that's happened also too as well over here in the Deserines household. So that's something that which lends me to when Julian was very younger, he had to get OT and PT services, and he got it until like about like 4 or 5, the OT. And what I learned, I had this wonderful OT, Shushayla. She was amazing, and she explained to me how important OT was. So OT, I didn't realize helps you with even as a baby. Your handwriting, your language acquisition, organizational skills, following directions. I think it's a handwriting, but it's just more than just, like manipulating things. It's actually like that eye tracking. It helps with reading as well. So when our kids can't find stuff, and if they have an OT issue, or just as a young person, they're still developing their brains, when they're scanning and we're doing the Dora the Explorer, like, gee, where's your viola or your trumpet? And they're like, la, 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 and they don't see it. They really don't see it because they're not looking left to right and up to down. They're kind of just looking blindly everywhere. So that's what I've learned through those like services that we got for Julian. And, he still needs some help with it, I think sometimes, because he does have a hard time, I think, getting organized because his brain is like a little scattered at times. So some things I learned from her was that the color code stuff, and I think that's probably why my notes made sense to me back in the day, because I was color coding things and I didn't realize it. Like schedules are great, routine lists, like you said you had, and cooking. Cooking actually helps kids with OT or PT like needs, because
that's interesting.
You're following directions. You have to actually mix. You have to pour. You have to manipulate things. So not only is it just fun and you get to eat whatever you make, but I've always had my kids cooking because not only is it just fun and nice to make something with your children, but it's so important to let them, crack the egg and yes, dig out the eggshells that they left in the batter. So that was like some things that I learned from like my OT, Shushayla. I love you, girl. I doubt she's listening, but man, she was honestly, I learned so much from her.
I think that's really wild. Something that you made mention of that I think is kind of like an important thing to maybe just bring up. And look, everyone as a parent, you get a little like, whatever. You only have so much patience in the world, but I think you brought up like a really interesting point about that, especially like what they can see, what they can't see, and it's almost like you have to like try to slow yourself down and remind yourself that some of the trouble with the situation is something you really maybe shouldn't. Obviously, we do sometimes, but you really maybe shouldn't get mad at things that are possibly beyond their control. They're maybe not developmentally ready for it, and possibly that this thing that they have, whatever that quote unquote thing is, everybody's things, maybe they just haven't learned these strategies yet. Maybe it's almost like the example I think Sara gave, or thinking of it in another way, is maybe like if they had like a big smudge in their glasses and they just couldn't see that part of it. It's just something that's beyond their control. So to me, like, that's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, we're in such a rush now, like today as families, we got to get from one thing to the next thing. And, I think also too, like you said, developmentally, they're little people. They're trying to still form. So it is hard to take a step back, breathe, because I know I've been there, and be like, okay, they're only this age. This is like at this point in their lives, they are trying. This is their first go at life. We've been there, we've done it, but they have to learn. So either you have to help set them up with these routines and like try to figure out all these strategies. And even with the best plans, it goes awry. Look at that nice quote right there.
Ooh, nice.
And
you got the quotes. I can't get them together. I can't pull them together today.
But also too, like, it's not fair to your toddler if you're rushing them when they're just like so happy and they want to bring Mickey Mouse and all their friends to the car, and you're like, but we really have to go, because they're still little. And then even as a teenager, I didn't realize that teenagers, they don't go into their layers or their rooms and hide out, and try to forget about taking out the garbage, or they're like going to stick it to you. No, they went in there, they started doing something, they got entertained by whatever it was or caught up in a conversation, and then all of a sudden it's like 9 p.m. and they haven't taken out the garbage, and they didn't mean to do that. It's just, that's the teenage brain as well. So I think it's like, it's worth trying to remember that at times, and giving grace to yourself and to your children, because man, I know when it's all messy and you can't find the shoe and the sock gremlins took away your sock again, and you said it so many times, but sometimes they don't really, it's not like they're doing this on purpose. And I think that's what as a parent, we have to try to remember, is that none of this is done on purpose.
Like purposely go out of their way to like make you mad or hurt you or whatever,
yes,
right?
Or make us late, or like lose a sock again, or they can't find the cleat, or forgot their cheer bag, or whatever else.
Everyone right now is listening is like, oh god, I have like listed 25 things. But some of the things that I think is helpful, and I don't know like if this is like one of the things that does help, but I think like putting it in a way where like you come up with some sort of systems where they have a shot at it. It may not always be successful, but like just like this idea of because, and I feel like the phones definitely have like a negative impact on us all, because the phone is like, it like for my older guy, he's like, sometimes he's just unaware. He's like leaves like a like a cup on the table or a snack bowl out, and I'm like, dude, do you see it? But I think that's something that has been really helpful with the phones, which I think is good, and iPads, is setting alarms. So like sometimes, right? Isn't that great? Like, so setting an alarm, like, so, at 8:30 p.m. or whatever it is, you got to pack up your backpack. You got to put it by the door, or like, charge your Chromebooks. We jokingly at the end of every episode, like, charge your Chromebooks. That's something that we kind of put on the alarms as well. And sometimes like my older guy will be kind of responsible enough to do that. But like my wife and I were like, one morning we're woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning, on a weekend, because we heard this noise and we're like, what is that? Running around the house, and it was like Jacob's iPad, and it was charged Chromebook. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the Chromebook charging alarm was probably for 5 p.m., not 5 a.m. So like, whatever that is. So when we found out, we turned it off and went back to sleep. But I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that he was responsible enough to kind of set that up on his own, though, which was like, at the moment, I was like, why did you wake me up, child? But I think that was good, because he's now like seeing like something that maybe works for him,
Yeah, same thing with Julian. I think the alarms, I started doing it, and then I started showing, because we have so many things going on in our brain. So like at work, if I put an alarm like, oh, go meet this person, or I have to talk to someone, or send out this email. So I'll put a little alarm, and you can like label them and stuff. So now I get Julian. Yeah. So I get Julian now to like during the day. I'm like, all right, Julian, by 5 o'clock, when I get home, we should start homework. So, and I go pick up Sophia. He puts a little alarm for himself to be ready because like we're tight on time. So he knows that by 5 o'clock, he's better be on the island, all the things he needs to study for while I start cooking dinner. And we're kind of, doing both things. And we've had that experience too, where Julian has a million alarms going off at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. on the weekend. It's like, why? He's like, well, I want to wake up to watch this or to start getting my Fortnite. And I'm like, oh my God. So, even at least his video gaming is organized versus, his room and stuff like that.
I love that because the things that are important, you always seem to kind of remember what goes on with those. It's everything else that seems like less important, which is maybe like a mental thing of like trying to find importance in things that are boring. But something that I think that is also, we mentioned it earlier, and I think like for us at our house, like the two big rules, I'm sure there's more, but the main ones in the back of our mind at all times, in the back of my mind at least, is homework gets done right away, and you never eat alone if we aren't eating as a whole family, because like there's a conversation or like a moment that occurs where you connect, and like that's super important, where like even if like maybe my wife's coming home late, or like somebody has like has to go to religion early or whatever it is, we just make sure that no one's sitting at the table by themselves eating, because like it's important. I think that dynamic of like just speaking to each other and having that, and maybe that isn't a parent, maybe it's like a caregiver, whatever it is. But I feel like you should never have your kid just sitting in the room eating by himself or whatever, or herself, because that's like a big chance for you to connect and see what's going on. One thing that I think that maybe is like, I'm curious about is like the getting ready stuff. Like, do your kids take showers like at the night before? Do they do it in the morning? Like for us in our house currently, our oldest is a 7th grader. Maybe he'll start to change as he gets older, like getting showered in the morning. But for now, everybody does their showers, baths, whatever it is, the night before, with the exception of the adults in the house. Do you guys operate a little differently, or is that kind of how you guys do it at your house?
So yeah, so we definitely bathe at night for the most part, unless it's like, all right, like you want to. So everyone bathes at night for the most part, and then in the mornings just like freshen up a little bit. But like sometimes the kids are like, I'm so tired, I'll just wake up early and like take a full shower. It's like, okay, cool, but Sophia is very good at like organizing her clothes. She makes sure that she has her things are washed or dried, and she'll tell me for the most part if I need to dry something for her, which is great. But some of the things that help Sophia, because I was talking to her, I was like, how do you get yourself organized? Because she is not the prime example of organization, but she has more or less systems that work for her. And something that she does that's really interesting is that, and I didn't even realize it, is in her drawers are the clothes that she wears frequently or that she likes the best. And
oh my gosh, they're the smartest kid ever.
Right? And then in her closet, where, goes into the abyss and never seen again, and everything's actually hung up, are the things that she doesn't really wear often or does not like as much. So that's like her nice dresses to go out for family events.
Slash donate pile, because where the things are that nobody wears.
Yes. But so that's where she kind of puts her stuff. And then another thing, as she started getting older, crossing over from being a kid to a preteen to a teen, is all her little beauty products or like things that she likes to use. I think it's important to have the kids pick out the stuff that's going to help them organize. Because I used to do things like bins, and she's like, that doesn't really work for me. Or the things that she needs now no longer are meant for bins. So, she gets like the pretty little display case. She gets a little pretty, holder that holds things. And I think if kids buy into the stuff that's going to help organize them, they will take care of it more. And I did that with Julian too, because he has the curly hair. He's getting more interested in wearing, like a little spritz of cologne, a little lotion more often, getting his hair done. So he too picked out something to kind of keep all his like little toiletries organized in his room. And that's like the only place that's organized besides action figurines on the shelves. Other than that, it's like chaos all around it. And his video games. Because again, those are things that he likes. Those are things he keeps organized. But you know what? I feel like that helped him buy into it.
That's wild, because like I think maybe some of the stuff that you're getting at is like just like allowing for a place to be organized, like making a system that allows for it to work. You said for them, but I think like the buy-in is cool, because if they like it, then they're gonna maybe want to use it. But like for us, like we have two kids in one room. So Jacob and Ethan are in the same room. And we had like Rachel and I kind of went back and forth of like, how do we keep the dresser clean? There's stuff everywhere. We narrowed things down to one random junk drawer of like things you get from birthday parties. But like one of the things we needed to have was just having like drawers in the closet to kind of like help them sort of organize. But like for like someone if a kid's like super hyper focused at times, if that's just their personality, they may not be aware of like where things go. And I think that one thing that is really eye opening is that your kids might get really good at putting things away, like the big things or like the really like easy to put away things. But then you're left with this like pile of randomness that, at least for me, without a doubt, sometimes having that random pile of like small things, then I shut down. I'm like, I don't know where this stuff goes. And then the temptation is just to like, shoot, take your hand, put it all in one spot. Like, I don't know, we'll get to this later. But then you have a pile of things that you have to like find their homes. But the more that they could kind of start to like kind of carve out their own systems and where things go, then you're probably less likely to run around for 20 minutes before school starts trying to find the thing that they were missing. But it's hard because they have to have their things, they have to have their system, but they might need help with the small stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then like a junk drawer is always good. I feel like a junk drawer is essential in every house, where you just kind of put random stuff and you're like, I don't know. But yeah, no, I think as a parent that took a bit for me to let go, at least with Sophia, and then with Julie May, I let go too much.
I love it.
Was trying to organize her drawers. I would say like, no, this side is for this and that, and I had a system that worked in my brain and it doesn't work for her. That's not how she thinks. So things are completely different. Like I'm like, that drawer is not meant for that, like how I would see it. But again, I think it's like letting go and letting them take that ownership, because if it works for them, that's wonderful. Another thing I had asked Sophia about too was her school stuff. So something that she learned about in school, this might be good for like high school students or like middle school students, is that she is able to organize her tabs and she color codes them by subjects. So aesthetically pleasing because they're like light pastel colors. But like she then also has a tab for homework. So any assignment that's on a Google Doc or Google whatever, or a link to something or a reminder, she has a tab and she like she makes a group. So leaves it
No
homework.
way.
And
so
then
the
she
actual
puts all
tabs
the
themselves on the web browser are like the actual colors that she needs them to be.
Yes. And then when she goes to the homework tab, then all bunch of other tabs open up because that's all the homework that's due tonight, or things that she needs to do tonight. So as her day goes by, she opens up the assignment, color codes it, throws it into the homework group.
So it probably takes a little while to get that started, but once it's set up, it seems like it maybe really works for her.
And she's been doing that since last year. And I'm like, who taught you that? She's like, I don't know. I just felt like doing it. And she's like, I was bored. And I was like, oh, cool. But it is such a system that every time I go, I'm like, where's your homework tab? And now she does it. Like, I need to figure out how she really does that, because I would love to figure that out for my own life, And then another thing she does is make sure that everything is labeled. So, because a lot of kids, if you ever help your children out, with the Google Docs or the Drive or whatever else, maybe whatever program your school uses, they open up a document. If it has to be like a fresh document, it just might be untitled, and there might be 20,000 untitled documents. So, or the first word of the sentence. So she'll make sure she'll say like PSAT practice number 1. So she'll really label everything and make sure everything is there. That way she could find it.
That is really pretty smart. I mean, I think like that's, wow. I'm like, that's going into the old Rolodex of knowledge. I love that. I love our systems. Something that I think that is also hard is I guess like one thing that's really hard is like, as far as knowing when to get rid of stuff and like try to avoid disaster. So knowing when to get rid of stuff, there was an interesting thing I happened to stumble across online. And keeping it real classy, it was called a poop test, I was like, what is this?
Oh, yes.
So if you know this, so apparently this is like a thing where like, cause like, sometimes, kids or adults, whatever, people tend to like hoard or hold on to things that they probably shouldn't. So I think it was something like this, like if something had like, poop on it or something disgusting or whatever, would it be worth cleaning or would you just toss it out? So if you ask yourself that question when you look at something and you're like, no, I would get rid of that in a heartbeat. Who cares? Then there's probably a thing that doesn't hold enough value to you that you're just holding on for sakes of holding on to it. And then you could kind of get rid of it.
Yes. No, I agree. I think getting rid of things, I think Julian loves to get rid of stuff, which is great. Sometimes things that he can still wear, I'm like, dude, this is fine, wear around the house, or, this is brand new. But yeah, I think getting rid of stuff is good. And another thing is, like Sophia was saying, and Julian said too, even though it's still a mess, he still manages to make a mess of his room. It's like minimal. It's keeping things kind of minimal. It's like throwing things out. It's, trying to condense stuff as much as possible. I think there's something that's good there too with that, having the kids, especially when you're like, hey, like someone else could use this, and like, all right, good. Like, so Julian always loves to do it. He's like, do you think a little kid would love to use this? I'm like, I think so. Definitely donate it,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think something that's really good too is that it's the excuse factor. And I think that there's a couple of books there, children's books. I might post a couple in the show notes. There's a children's books, and I think that this dawned upon us. We went to like back to school night for one of our kids' teachers who in first grade, she's like, I tried to teach them some sort of responsibility, and I was like, I love you. And so Miss Gottlieb, if you're listening, way to go. She did this thing where she was like, if a kid forgets homework, she's like, wait, is it your parents' fault or is it your fault? And the kids will be like, oh. And then it would be like, okay, well, so it's my responsibility to pack up at night. And that was like eye-opening because, you're so in it sometimes that like you forget that like maybe if you just take the extra 30 minutes to start to like have the conversations, develop some sort of routines, you won't be spending an extra 20 minutes every other day dealing with the problems that you just haven't fixed. So like, I think like taking a step back, and it probably didn't hurt that it didn't come from us. It probably came from the teacher, and it was like another adult speaking, because sometimes you need that, like, sometimes my mom will tell them something or like somebody else. But if we said it, maybe it's like, just another life. Well, after last week when Mike Levine was like another piece of life advice, Mom, Jacob actually reacted the same way to my wife. Where she was like, tells her, she's like, here we go, another life lesson. I'm like, what, did you just listen to the episode? So it's crazy. But I think like another small thing that like kind of fits into that middle child, or not, I don't mean middle child, I mean middle age kind of thing of middle age. Am I getting this more wrong? Middle age is like 35, 40 years old. What I meant to say was when they're in that middle part of schooling where they're like sort of like the later part of elementary school, or even maybe a little bit before, something that we kind of started doing was when I have like the homework sheets that go home and I look at them and I feel like it's going to be a disaster. Why don't I, this could be the younger ones, whatever. Any kid, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this could be a disaster. They might do it wrong. They might get frustrated and draw something that doesn't come out the way they want. I'll just photocopy it. I'll have my backup just in case things go south. And I'm like, you know what? That didn't go so well. Here's a new one. Let's just do it. And all of a sudden, sometimes you've now remedied the situation where just sometimes eraser doesn't take away all the disasters, and you just have to have another solution. But I think we've definitely hit on some great things today as far as like how to sort of tackle different age things. Maybe even like Sophia had her own system, what we definitely learned from her. And things as far as like just setting appropriate times for kids when they know that they're going to need to get things done, kind of a little reminder with alarms, and even establishing routines. We didn't mention it, but something as far as just like setting a time for how long you think something might take, because some kids will take 3 days to clean their room, but if you give them 30 minutes, it would probably be just as effective. But I think the question this week from our listeners, we'd love to hear from you, is what things in your kid's life when it comes to cleaning could drive you absolutely crazy or getting organized. We'd love to know the disasters, because you know what? We feel a little bit better when we're not the only ones that are suffering here. So you can get in touch with us here. If you have comments, questions for the show, and answering this question, you can get in touch with us one of three ways. You can leave a message on our Hey the Parents voicemail line at 559-537 5437 or 559 LA Kids. You can email the show at heytheparents@gmail.com, and then our social media stuff is on the show notes. So now we're back for this part of the show. It's called Time to Unplug. This is where we talk about the things that are going on outside of the children, because sometimes we just have to talk about something for ourselves with our spouses, something that makes us happy, because sometimes you just have to decompress, because you know what? You'll be a better we if you take care of me. So Sarah D, I am excited because I see Stephen King listed in your One More Thing this week.
Man, I love Stephen King. I think I like started like reading his stuff when I was in high school. Then I fell off. Then I picked it up again. And so I love me an audiobook. Keeps me, happy and entertained as I'm commuting to work and driving around these children. So
or sitting in the car crying. There's many options.
One or the other. So the audiobook I'm listening to now is You Like It Darker. And it is a bunch of short stories, which are long. It's like a 20-hour book, I think, or something like that. But I love that because then it's just like, it's a consistent, like different stories. And it's a really good listen. I love the voice actors because they try to really get into each character. So that keeps me entertained. So it's a good listen. If you like it, a little spooky, a little twisted, a little whatever, nothing like too crazy this time around so far. I'm on the second story that I'm enjoying and listening to him right now.
That's cool. And it's funny because as you were speaking, I couldn't help myself. I had to like search for it. So I was like, does You Like It Darker connect to the Dark Tower? Because I don't know, like if our listeners, I had to finally pull the trigger, and I did read a few summers ago. I read the Dark Tower series, which was wild because it's so cool. It's like the metaverse, or like Fortnite before Fortnite. Everything is connected in all of his early stories and books to the Dark Tower, and like all the stuff he wrote. He's made like characters or things like Salem's Lot. There's a priest that's in the Dark Tower. There's so many things. It's really, really wild. So I always have to like look and see, are there any Easter eggs? Are there things that connect? So that's something that I hope comes to TV soon, because I kind of want to see what they do with it. But this week, I have to report back on some other fantasy related stuff, because I did finish the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power season 2. So the Lord of the Rings show, I think it's definitely worth checking out. The second season, I think it's an improvement for the first season. It deals a lot with Sauron and all of the things that sort of really relate to the movies and to the books. So like if you want a little bit of fan service, you want a little bit of Easter eggy stuff, if you read the books, I think it's really interesting because it was a character like Tom Bombadil that never made it to the stories, or to the movies rather. You find out maybe like who this crazy wanderer is, this magic guy. They dropped a lot of clues. I'm not going to say what that is. And that was really wild. And I think a lot of the little things like the Balrog under with the fire and everything else that kind of happened in the movies, these are all the things that relate. So even if like you're not loving the show, to go in and like see where maybe all of these things kind of connect from, and they're kind of like they're the pre-stories and the things that led up to what happens in the movies, it's actually kind of interesting. So I liked it. I can't promise that everyone in the house did. There were definitely some moments where I'm the only one watching on the couch, but I think it's definitely worth checking out. If you're into it, if you're into fantasy, this week apparently we've got some good references to Stephen King, to a little Lord of the Rings, and I think that is okay. So I think we are just about out of time. It's been fun hanging out with Sara, talking all about the Hot Mess Express, because sometimes that's a train that you're just not going to get off of, and you have to make do with the tracks you got. So let's take a moment to thank our listeners or supporters for donating to the show. If you want to support this show so we can keep making episodes like this one, we have a link to donate in the show notes. If you don't have the means to do so, we really appreciate it when you tell your friends and family about the podcast so we can reach more listeners. And maybe we can learn from them and they can learn from us in this growing community. If you have a chance, please leave us a review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We can't wait to explore this parenting thing with you next week on Hey the Parents, because each week it's an honest discussion about raising kids. Don't forget to hug those kids and charge those Chromebooks. That's new for me, for Sara. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Hey the Parents is produced by Mike Levine, Sara Desirbeans, and me, Michael Haidt. I edit and mix our show. Our intro voice recording was done by the one and only Coltrane. If you like our show, we hope you'll consider going to our show notes and help support the podcast. Check the show notes for social media and information and context, and we look forward to seeing you next time.